Uganda. On Tuesday, July 23rd, the highly anticipated day of protest known as the March on Parliament began with less momentum than expected, primarily due to the heavy deployment of police and military forces throughout Kampala. Several dozen protesters were arrested, charged, and remanded to prison. The harsh treatment of the protesters raises serious concerns about the government's stance on fighting corruption and its failure to uphold constitutional rights to free assembly and peaceful protests. The aggressive response by security forces not only undermines the credibility of the government's anti-corruption efforts, but also highlights a broader issue of human rights and civil liberties being compromised. Tonight we delve into the complexities surrounding these youth-driven anti-corruption protests and the potential path forward for addressing both corruption and the protection of fundamental rights in Uganda. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me introduce my panel this evening. I have an advocacy and communications manager at FIDA, Elizabeth Kemejisha. Thank you so much for joining us, Elizabeth. Good evening.
Thank you for having me, Patrick.
We have the Honorable Bernard Odoi, Youth Member of Parliament for Eastern Uganda. Thank you so much for joining us, Honorable.
It's a pleasure.
And I also have with us Ezra Rwashande Ambasize, who's a lawyer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Patrick, for hosting me.
Let me begin with the Member of Parliament, because you represent the youth.
Yes.
And the young people seem to be angry. Angry because of the integrity deficit in our country, the hemorrhage of public resources, the efforts that are not bearing fruit in terms of fighting corruption. They have gone on the street. Some of them are in prison. These are people who voted into your office. These are people who we should be able to understand better. How did this anger reach this level without you, the person who represents them in Parliament, really being on top of the situation, or even bringing the things on the floor of Parliament for issues that they raise to be discussed?
Thank you, Patrick. The issue at hand, allow me borrow from the medical sphere. There's normally a swelling in between legs called, on the upper thighs, called lymph.
Oh, where are you heading? Okay.
It's called lymphadenitis. Now, what we saw was now the food that has been prepared over the years. This swelling had reached a level where it must explode. That the young people have a genuine cause. The youth, the Gen Z community, which I lead, which I serve, where I belong, for a long time have had a genuine cause. The issue of me and my colleagues who represent the youth not giving them platform can be debated another day, because the avenue they chose is also within our legal framework. So the debate for me is what they were doing, what was the cause, why did they choose this avenue? It is because they believed our constitution provides for this. And as representative of the Gen Z, this I must own clearly, that for a very long time, this pain has been there amongst the youth. They are having genuine cause. They are not seeing space to air out. They are seeing economic difficulties every single day. They are seeing issues of corruption by government officials, by the issue of abuse of office every day, and they are simply saying, whereas government have mechanism of addressing this, it is not yet enough. And for us, we chose them, they chose to use that avenue to then present their issue. We are living at a time where, let's face it, government 30 years ago introduced the National Youth Council. The superstructure is there, the system is there, right from the village to the national level. But the resource, the operating systems to empower these people to be effective has been debatable. is lacking. That you have the superstructure, you have the leadership, but not enough is given to them to manage their own affairs. And then they choose to use this to express their discontent. The other issue that we must face it is that the government has done some positives, huge positives. Let's address it through education. Right from primary, the free primary education, secondary, then colleges, there's the government scholarship, now the loan scheme. Now you have an educated community of young people, very ambitious, with a lot of time, a lot of energy, but they are not placed. So they are saying, yes, we appreciate government, you've done us good. Immunization was carried out. So life has been preserved. Because we are told then, before the immunization, several kids would die. But that has changed over time. So we are saying, the youth are saying, yes, we appreciate you've given us fairly better medical care. Here we are. We need to be.
But I also want to think, Honorable Doi, that these young people have also decided to disregard platforms where you serve, because those platforms, you as their youth leader, has not been able to focus on the problems and their pain. And so they say, no, we are not going to go that way because you are there, but you are not representing them. Do you get that sense?
I get that sense, but as a team representing the youth, we are trying to do our best. We have brought in issues to have a fund specifically for the youth. Because one of the biggest issues we have is that whereas our young people are very entrepreneurial, but access to cheap funds without interest is almost not there. We've seen our young people thriving all over Kampala, whether it's chapati, welding, border issues is also another discussion, but they are not protected. I can give an example. We are almost in a border economy. A young person maybe sells a piece of land, goes to these guys who sell borders, deposits 1 million shilling. Ordinarily, a border costs 4.9 million. And then he's given this on credit. He rides it for like 2 years. If you calculate, he pays like 8 million in total. But if he defaults, even after paying 7 million, the other guys will take it. They are not protected. So for me, the issue is, do we address the issue, the right issue affecting our people? You find a young person operating a chibanda, say in Namuongo. He's assured of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, guys will come and watch soccer.
Let me
but Uleme is not there. He has to spend money on generator, buy fuel. We are not helping them.
Let me come to Elizabeth. Today, Elizabeth, I saw a harrowing picture. In fact, a gory image of somebody I know, Nana Nalongo, a woman who decided to express herself because she's angry over corruption. But the way how she was treated, it was despicable. And other pictures we haven't seen. As a woman, as an advocate, as somebody who's concerned, what do you make of this?
Thank you so much, Patrick. First, I would like to first backtrack the question you asked earlier on if youth have disregarded the available mechanisms, initiatives, platforms for them to express themselves about their discomforts, about inequalities, the increasing inequalities in the country, unemployment, lack of access to major social, health, education, housing, and many other social services. I doubt, Patrick, that the youth or young people in this country and other vulnerable groups like women that you speak of, Nana, have not used the right platforms. I'll particularly say that there's a lot of dialogues that is happening in this country, right? We have seen several statements fly around saying, you know what, we encourage the youth to dialogue with their leaders. And this youth are doing. On a regular, Patrick, if you went through any city, let me just talk about Kampala, where many of us, usually have these dialogues. If you went through several hotels or certain spaces in this country, you'll find several groups discussing different development issues, calling local government officials. We are discussing climate change and how we can make sure that it's not destroying, the country and affecting economic development. There are several civil society groups. There are several CBOs. There are groups at the local level that have organized to speak, to dialogue. Far from that also, we cannot take away the fact that it's a constitutional right for youth or young people to go through this particular way of expressing their dissatisfaction with the current government. When you look at the treatment of protesters, not just these particular peaceful demonstrations, just in Uganda, looking back for all the demonstrations that we've kept on seeing, whether it's young people, whether it's the ECOP saga, whether it's Temangalo, whether it's Global Fund, whether it's Women's March UG when several women were dying, we've noticed that it has become very common, actually business as usual, for police to use excessive power when arresting people. Let's just talk about what's been happening currently in the country. No young people were seen carrying bullets, were seen carrying guns, burning tires. If anything, their only gadgets that they had were their placards demanding for accountability, and rightfully so. What happened? Many of them were treated so poorly, in a very indignified manner, for practicing their constitutional right under Article 43. True, there are restrictions to how Article 43 can be implemented, but none of those restrictions can be brought forth by the police that is doing all these things that we are finding wrong with their response to protests. So for me, what we make out of this is that the government has continued to make it difficult for people to respond or hold them accountable for their failure. And as a reflection for many of our viewers today, for me, I think it's important that we reflect on the social contract between the citizens and the state is breaking down. And do you know why, Patrick? Because the government has continuously failed on their bargain of that social contract.
Let me go to Ezra. Ezra, I understand you're a lawyer, you're a human rights defender. And quite a number of young people now, some of them have been booked in as guests of the state in Luzera. Some of them must be worried, some of them must be going through very difficult moments. But let's face it, it's not just the young people in the dock. It appears to me democracy is in the dock, freedom of expression is in the dock, freedom of assembly is in the dock. So as a human rights defender, how do you defend those freedoms?
Thank you very much, Patrick Kamala, and good evening, viewers. Patrick, in every republic where the meanest man is deprived of his right, they have deprived the rights of everyone. These are young people, very poor, frustrated, unemployed, but they have sat and identified one of the problems that may have contributed to their problems. Come and present it, or ask a permission to use their constitutional rights to express themselves towards the whole nation and towards an institution where we have our representatives that we send there. But in response, it is a deployment of the highest order that you cannot believe. It's as if someone has declared a war in the city. And then, whatever happens, these are young people who came with placards. These are young people who engaged the police more than 5 times. They even wrote a letter, I have it here. I'm sure you have already seen it also. When the police failed, they took another option. This is dialogue they are talking about. They're engaging. They went further and wrote a letter to Nakalema, Kano Nakalema. The reason why they wrote a letter to Kano Nakalema is because she has been in that field of fighting corruption. She is one of the people who has been who once led the anti-corruption work to Kololo. She is one who has been in the anti-corruption unit, State House. That's where her relevance came in. This is after they have They have failed everywhere. The reason and the message that they sent to Kano Nakalema was to take them to Mr. President and talk to him. And even the youth coming to trust Kano Nakalema, that one should be accredited to her. There are very many people, very many brokers who were saying, we can take you to the president. Young people said, no, we know you politicians. You want to go and start getting money from the president, and then after you bring us and nothing is going to be done. If Madame Nakalema cannot take us, we shall make our sound to be heard by the president. That's how they expressed themselves on Tuesday, 23rd. Young people were arrested, were tortured. I was at Rizira yesterday, the whole day. I visited them. Some of them are limping. These are young people who have come without any weapon. They don't have a stone, they don't even have a stick. The smallest thing someone can have to harm a human being. But you have deployed the whole city. Where does a problem comes from? I think also this deployment, it is full of corruption. The informers of the president, maybe they inform him so that they get a bigger budget. And after getting a bigger budget, they use it and bring big tanks and what? In fact, they are also citing violence.
I think you bring us another angle, very interesting angle.
Which I'm bringing.
Yes.
So, these young people have been accused of two common cases, or common offenses. This is idle and disorderly. That is the idle and disorderly, and then common nuisance. Idle and disorderly, it was overruled in 2018 in the case of Francis Tumwesije versus Attorney General. And the court went ahead to rule that the offense of idle and disorderly cannot be, it has no limit. Someone how he can limit it. The reason is, when you look at its elements,
that's an offense that's rooted in colonialism that was made
exactly
to take away people's
exactly.
whatever.
So this is its elements. One, that you look you look wandering. That is one of its elements. You look wandering. The second element is that
you're a vagabond.
Exactly.
Well,
you're in the process of committing an illegal act. These young people were not wandering. They knew where they were heading.
And they only knew.
And the whole nation knew. So, this way of handling the citizens, the young people, it should surely be changed.
Okay, let me come back to you, Honorable Bernard Odoi, because you are a leader, elected leader by the young people to represent them in Parliament, a very strong arm of government. If you are not able to speak, or government is not able to speak to these young people today, when they still can, tomorrow these young people are going to be radicalized, and it's going to be very hard for you to talk to them because they have moved a step above. You know they can move a notch higher.
Yes.
So you as leaders, what do you do to avoid them moving a notch higher? Because if they are tear gas today, beaten today, taken to Rosetta today, tomorrow the numbers can swell, they lose the fear of the police, and then we shall have anarchy in Kampala, and this could be game over.
Allow me make this very clearly. As representative of the youth, one thing I want to register is that all the youth who were arrested, we are calling for amnesty. Even in the president's message, he did indicate that some of these people were just lured into this without knowing that they are actually foreign elements.
Do you believe that?
No,
Is that what you believe?
I am making reference
you are their leader and you represent them in Parliament. You are referencing on the President's message. Is that what you believe, Honorable Doy?
Also, what is very clear is that in 2019, our President also affirmed that the offense of idleness and disorderly was a creation of the colonialists. Now, on that very Tuesday, personally, I engaged several of those leaders on phone. I said, can we have a table and discuss before this and after this? So for me, the conversation is government, we must push government to address the issues that has been relayed by the young people. The issues are very genuine and we cannot run away from it.
But you know, as a member of Parliament, the issue they are talking about is an issue of corruption.
Yes.
Your house has been accused, is facing serious allegations of corruption, including the Speaker himself, who finds herself, painted an image that is not so good by Uganda's major development partners. And that does not augur well for our country. Your members of Parliament themselves have been saying, we have been denied a chance to debate issues of corruption in the House. There's an element of intimidation and fear that we don't understand from members of Parliament, that they cannot longer express themselves. What is it with 12th Parliament that they are lacking the still to stand and talk on matters of concern for their country?
Now, I am of the school of thought that actually these young people are patriots to the President's message. When we were in Kololo, when the President asked, he indicated he had evidence against members of Parliament and technocrats from Ministry of Finance. He indicated he had evidence on allegations of corruption. And he then asked, do we give them amnesty or you want to see blood? The majority said, yes, we want to see blood. It is from that background, actually, that the young people, I believe, then pushed honestly to join in that fight. Because 2 days later, our colleagues were picked. They were arrested and paraded before court. Now, to that extent, you can't say our house has issues and nothing is being done on it. Matters are before court. But also on the issue of debate that you are referring to, today there was a press conference by our colleagues and they have arrived at the number. That house is a house of rules and they follow rules to the strict sense. Now, there is no way they would entertain that debate before the members had ascertained the threshold of the number.
No, it didn't even have to take for somebody to go looking for signatures.
That is what the rules talk about.
Because that's a censure motion. It's different. You could have debated without even a censure motion. It could have been on order paper without a censure.
But the rules that they sought to follow provides that they must get that number. And today, they confirm that they got that number. The test should be, now that they have the number, is the House going to allow them? Is the House not going to allow them? That is the next debate. Now, the fact that members have actually signed, for me, is also a positive conversation that members are in agreement that there must be positive discussion about issues and allegations within us as Parliament.
Elizabeth, yes. I suppose with all respect to a young person as well, this country is probably the biggest percentage of young people. Whatever direction you're going to take is going to be because of the young people. The leaders we have today is because of the young people. You are the people who are giving the mandate to lead. Can you wake up and smell the coffee? That the power that you have in your numbers, do not give it to the people who are not deserving. Because you have the numbers, and whether we go down or go up, it will be you. Yeah. You'll have decided with your numbers.
Yeah.
So you are culpable as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Patrick, thank you for that question. And sorry, Honorable, but I'd like to disagree with you when you say we needed to have all those many signatures to discuss corruption at a time when it's almost clear. You know, I think what pains a lot of young people, including myself, is the lack of accountability and dismissal of processes, right? The fact that we continue to see these sagas, you know, in the newspapers, and there's all this evidence, and no one is in court. Business as usual continues. I'd like to give an example. I remember during COVID-19, Uganda did borrow money to set up regional COVID centers. Do we have any in Uganda? None. Do we have anyone that was prosecuted for the same? None. Do we have a debt to pay? Yes, we do. Who is going to pay this debt? You and I. Right? So there is strength in numbers, and the decisions that are being made right now affect me and many other young people that have hit the streets, many young people that are on Twitter, many young people that are on Facebook, demanding for accountability. It's very discouraging, Patrick, to be in a space where you're so many, but you're not even getting listened to, right? Many young people are organizing in different groups for these peaceful demonstrations because they do not feel like their voice is being heard, and rightfully so. Right? So many, the current Speaker of Parliament and the many allegations of the other members of Parliament of corruption, while it's very unfortunate because while all that is happening, 23% of our annual budget is lost in corruption. This is amidst a huge public debt that we will pay. This is amidst almost more than 60% of our funding is foreign for critical services like health. If you look at health financing right now in Uganda, we do not reach the standard we should be, but we are continuing to borrow. I do not want to get into the Lobowa Hospital saga, right? Corruption scandals are everywhere, and we do not seem to have any platforms.
Let me take you back. We have a president who came to power almost 40 years ago with 10 points. He called them the 10-point program. And point number 7 was about fighting corruption. Just this year, we've seen him, you know, really, you know, angry about the hemorrhage of public resources. We have seen him walk, protest to Kololo, to protest against corruption. He has said he's going for them. Don't you see in him as a strategic ally who is understanding your language? He's put the system, he's said the language you're speaking, he's angry like you, and just the other day he appointed another group to oversee Uganda Revenue Authority, ostensibly to stamp out corruption. This, to me, looks like a strategic ally.
Patrick, is this a tricky question? Because I want to say no. I do not think the president does feel what's happening, and I don't think that he's treating with strict seriousness the issue of corruption in this country. Like I've mentioned before, we could go over 10 samples of corruption sagas in this country, and we look at how many of those were even prosecuted. Just now, how many members of parliament have been involved in these corruption sagas, have been brought to book? It's continuous business as usual. Just the other day on Tuesday, when young people had had all these conversations with police to be able to peacefully demonstrate, business was going on in parliament. That's disregard of the biggest population and our needs. So Patrick, I do not think the president does feel the pain that many young people feel right now, because he has not taken active steps to ensure that there is accountability and that people are brought to book.
You want to see actions?
Yes, there should be actions.
They should work. Let me come to you, Ezra, because Ezra, quickly before we take a break, you know, when the president's message, he seemed to suggest there's, you know, a backhand, that the young people, somebody is moving them on a joystick. Probably there's a European or American hand involved. What do you make of that?
Patrick, first and foremost, I just want, I stated it before, that the informers of the president are also corrupt, in that they have reached an extent now of giving him an information that is not clear, that mislead not only him, but even the whole Ugandans. You see, the president is someone who has preached, someone who, when he joined into power and brought it number 7 to fight against corruption, it means he had that point clear. But in every speech of the president starting from 1986 In fact, 1985, when he was in Nairobi, he talked about corruption. He's still talking about corruption. In other words, the implementers.
But let me ask.
I'm still coming.
You know, my interest.
I'm still coming.
I'm looking at the foreign interest. The president is making allegation of foreign interest. And you are a human rights defender.
Yes.
And you've been defending these kids. In what capacity do you come in to defend them, even though it's a noble cause? Who is paying your bills?
Who is paying our bills? First and foremost, every NGO or every civil society organization, it has its own work plan. And this work plan, it is submitted to NGO Bureau. And every money or every funds, all the funders that the NGOs receive, this country has Financial Intelligence Authority. They always track that money. So, in case of the intelligence, them having where there is any European or intervention in this protest.
And the president is the major recipient of all the intelligence briefing that come from all the sectors of security.
Which is okay.
Yeah. So, but people who put in
the
money
president,
in the civil society, don't they also have some interest?
He has been informed. There is no one who is disregarding that the civil societies receive funding. But they receive funding for the particular activities that develop a nation, but not to fight the nation. If you receive a funding to protect human rights, or to protect the human rights defenders, is that a bad idea? It is not.
Ezra, Honorable Doy, and Elizabeth, gentlemen and lady, hold on to your points because you're going to take a break on the spot. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest this evening, I have Elizabeth Kemijisha, Advocacy and Communications Manager at FIDA. You have Honorable Bernard Odoy, Member of Parliament representing the youth in Eastern Uganda. I have Ezra Rwashande Ambasize, who's a lawyer and has been defending the rights of these young people. I want to continue this discussion with you again, Rwashande, but also add another issue that has come up that is so disturbing. And there was a statement, some people are saying it's fake, but that young people who have been released have talked of being sodomized while in police custody or in prison. For a country really that is so against sodomy, if this is true, one wonders how a police officer in his uniform is turned on by a young man and then he just tells him bend over and he does these horrible things to them. Have they reported something like that to you as their defender?
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. As we are going for a break, you were still asking me how we come up and to defend these human rights, and I was still giving my submission. It was still running. So, as I stated it clear, that every NGO has its activities which are sent to NGO Bureau and they are approved. Different. Some did in torture, others did in food security, others did in human rights. But all these are submitted to the NGO Bureau and they are confirmed.
You're also supposed to get a certificate of good conduct from internal security.
Exactly.
You're supposed to be vetted
all that is done. I know that. All that is done. So, another thing. When it comes to young lawyers like us, we are given a chance to do pro bono work. The pro bono work that give you more experience in your work. Looking at me running up and down, going to Zira, going to Kampala Road Court, going to Nakawa, it is just out of the passion. Coming up to be a lawyer, it is not an easy thing. It is just passion, something you like. And when they call you a lawyer, you feel you should defend you should defend the human rights. You should defend everything about a young lawyer or even senior lawyers We have seen the President Law Society. When we are running up and down there, he was there. So we thank him. We have seen other lawyers, very many lawyers, who practice human rights. So coming to torture, I made it clear that I visited these young people. And even today, my colleague also went there to see them. Some of them are okay when you interview them, but there are other people, there are other young people who were fully tortured. One, the leg was broken, and the officer is identified. That is our work. The good chance is that young people know that person who was mostly torturing young people, and they know the name. Anytime, they will bring him on record. So, we have seen that.
Have they reported to you allegations of sodomy?
To me?
Yes.
Definitely they have reported to me. That's what I'm telling you. They have done that. And it is still happening. But our challenge, another challenge that we have, it is the leadership of young people. From the time these young people started up this protest, when they declared that they are going to protest, there is no minister, there is no MP, Member of Parliament for Youth, there is National Youth Council, who came out to engage these young people and ask them, how can we do this? Instead, these people, they were shying away from these young people so that they don't call them the foreign agents, because they had already defined it as these young people are being funded by the foreign agents, which is not the case.
All right.
I want to make it categorically clear that me personally, making my contribution, running up and down, looking at these young people, there is no one who has funded me. And other people, young people that I know, who are leading these protests.
I thought you said you have funders.
Pardon? Pardon?
I thought you said you work under NGO and then you get funders to support you because you're not
Those
paid
are different.
by anyone.
I said different activities. And NGO has a work plan.
But
this is something that came in.
Isn't this part of your work, the good work? I agree with you on what you're doing, the issue of human rights protection of our people. But now, because initially you indicated you get funding from the foreigners, the partners.
From we have partners. Don't call them foreigners to make it as if
I said
these
partners.
Yes, from partners.
But what is clear that when this money comes in, this money is known by government.
It is
known by government.
It is known by
internal
government.
security.
Yes, it cannot cause any problem to the nation.
There's
because there's financial intelligence authority.
Yes.
So there's nothing that's done.
So there is nothing it can do.
But
to the nation.
Honorable Odoi, so now where do we go from here? There is a problem. The young people are shedding a light on Parliament.
Yes.
And they're saying Parliament is rotten with corruption. That's what they think, that's what they say. There is a problem. The Inspectorate of Government says we are losing 10 trillion a year.
Yes.
10 trillion because of corruption. And yet when you look at public service delivery, it's wobbly. So there is a problem. How do we deal with this? And yet the systems created to fight graft have not worked. And these systems have been there for long.
I thank you, Patrick. Now, before I comment on Parliament, the issue of our young people complaining about being sodomized, the big issue, the question should be, have they reported that they were sodomized by police or in the cells by fellow suspects or prisoners? That should come out very clearly, so that then we know where to apportion.
Well, they'll be able to tell more of their stories when they gain their freedom.
Because if they speak ambiguously, it's something that touches the core of our conversation. So the same should be very clear. Is it by police? Then they should be accounted. They should be accountable. Is it by the prisoners? Now, going back to Parliament, I want to register this clearly, that Parliament committees like PAC, COSASE, trade the issue of our people, colleagues who have been arrested, including also the peers of trade, was as the result of the work of members of parliament under those committees. It was as the result of the recommendations made by members of parliament. So to that extent, we must register that they have done well. The issue of Mabati, where we saw the president removing two ministers, dropping two ministers, was also the issue that came out through parliament when the issue arose that people were engaged in stealing of Mabati that was meant for Karamoja. Action was done. Now, you cannot, it is not proper to say parliament in its entirety is not doing a good job. Most of the arrests that has been made has been on the basis of recommendations made by parliament. Whereas that might not be sufficient, we are saying there is work underway and we only have to do better.
Okay, Elizabeth, let's come back to Elizabeth before.
On him. You see, what is very funny and what is frustrating young people in this country, the implementer of the law or the enforcer of the law, and then the drafters or the makers of the law, they are the most corrupt institutions that we have, police and parliament. That is a very big problem.
Okay, Elizabeth, you know, allegations can be there, but for you to prosecute somebody and successfully maybe get a conviction and probably the people remanded, you have to have evidence. You have to go through a court process. It's not like you can say, so Ezra is corrupt and then get him and grab him and put him to jail. No. So you understand this. The president seems to have shown willingness to fight. The institutions have been put in place. Some members of parliament are facing serious allegations and they are having their day in court. The other day, members of cabinet who were accused of abuse of office, there was a reshuffle. How else can this be done without using the law? Because you have to use the law available. The process is slow. By the way, they can actually even defend themselves in courts of law and then win their case and regain their freedom because that's the nature of how things are done. Why don't you also give him a benefit of the doubt that his intent is good, he's moved on, is the right direction, and listen to him and see how things are moving?
Thank you, Patrick.
That smile is not good.
Like the president, but why are you setting me up?
I'm not setting you up.
Anyway, I think first of all, our conversation has been centered around us asking if the president has taken the issue of corruption seriously. But I think it should be broadened to look at the systems that are available to tackle corruption, because it's not the sole mandate of the president to respond or to tackle corruption. We do have several structures, we do have laws that have been set up that are supposed to respond to corruption.
Yes.
Right, so those are some of the systems that I think that we can use right now. Secondly, I think, Patrick, it's very unfair to just say that the head of state and the systems have tried, because we believe they have not. If indeed you can go to court and defend yourself and there is evidence that is presented to you, then so be it. But it cannot be that today the papers are reporting several evidence of so much money going to private accounts of members of parliament, of staff of parliament, money meant for something else. Trips that are funded by taxpayers' money, right? And we cannot intend anymore. The intent is not enough. It's important that we are actioning. If indeed there is need for evidence, let it be presented to the judiciary. Let them be presented, let them be arrested, let them be arraigned in court, and then let them make their defense. But we cannot continue business as usual with only an intention. The judiciary, therefore, Patrick, needs to also play their role. Looking at the recent protests and how the judiciary has responded to the problem, there's also been a questionable, sense from many Ugandans if the judiciary is playing its role, if the judiciary is indeed independent, right? People are getting arrested on vagrant offenses that were already scrapped. And a court is sitting, still using taxpayers' money, remanding young people for over 8 years for an offense of idle and disorderly, regardless of whether it's still part of the law or not. I think that's very unfair. That is one. Then two, of course, it brings into question the independence of the judiciary, like I've said. Is the judiciary, can Ugandans still trust the judiciary to deliver justice? Can Ugandans still go through judiciary to ensure that they hold members of parliament or anyone else that is corrupt accountable? Patrick, I'll be honest with you, many young people, the fabric of trust between the citizens and the state has continued to break down for many reasons. We have talked about the state of social service delivery in this country, which has led us to this place where young people are saying enough is enough. We are tired of our mothers dying. We are tired of police asking for money to investigate sexual violence cases. We are tired of half the road is potholes. Right? Meanwhile, at the end of every month, for those that are employed formally, there is this big chunk of money that is taken away. I was just telling Honorable earlier that each time you look at your pay, you shake.
Pay as you would enjoy.
You know, you shake, because where is this money going, right? But we continue to fulfill our bargain of the social contract while the government continues not to fulfill their end. So what is, can we continue to trust the judiciary to actually deliver is also a question. However, let's use due process. Let them get arrested. Why are we assuming that at the end of the day, they will not have enough evidence to prosecute these people? So it's important that we are using the systems, we are using the reports, we're using the media reports, that the investigative stories that media houses like yourselves, the spotlight that you're putting on the different members of parliament, especially this parliament, to be able to prosecute these cases, regardless of the issues that we have right now. So for me, I think it's important that people are brought to book. Let there be accountability. Let them pay back this money that is being stolen from Ugandans, because it's taxpayers' money, and it has a lot of things that it would do to improve the social, economic lives of many Ugandans, including their young people.
So Ezra, if I make you as a human rights defender, I don't know in what spirit you find these young people, but if they are still determined, they're going to get back tomorrow. The problem still persists. The number can only increase, and the situation can only get bad unless they are listened to. Are you getting any inclination of, like, we are going to listen to them, we're going to have a dialogue? I'm asking this not only because you're a lawyer, but I also remember you used to be a speaker of National Youth Council or something like that. Yes. So more or less you're also an interested party because you've been a youth leader, first and foremost, before you're an advocate.
Thank you, Patrick. About coming up with a dialogue, for the youth, they started dialogue long time when they drafted different letters to the police and to the former anti-corruption boss to take them to the president. They started dialogue, but still now, the youth, for them, they are ready for dialogue, of which very many people have tried to come in. These, you see, politicians have just come in, whom we think they are brokers, whom we don't trust apparently, because they saw this thing escalating and kept quiet. Now they are coming saying, let's take you to the president. No, the president knows that has the youth in this country whom he called the Bazukulu. We are waiting for the president to be the one to call us and tell us, I will be at Kololo or find me here. And as young people, we march there and we talk to the president. But looking at someone who is going to connect us to the president, we no longer trust these people. You have seen the president. All his agenda.
There's a fundamental
there is something I would like to put clear.
Sometimes, and Elizabeth hinted on it, for everybody looking at the president.
The reason is,
everybody's going to the president.
The reason is, that states it clear that maybe the president is the only person who has remained clean apparently. And people, and all Ugandans no longer trust any style of leadership or any leader who is there, because all of them, starting from when we go to the hierarchy of the government, they all have scandals in this term. It is very clear. They have been hinted on cases of corruption. So we have a very big reason to say that we need to see the president.
Honorable Odoi, is the parliament where you sit scared of young people? Is the president scared of young people?
I don't believe so.
Well, then why not give them an audience and talk to them?
Yeah, but there is conversation to that extent.
Conversation now in New Zealand?
You just you just Ambassador Council, you just indicated that you went to Kano Nakalema with a letter because then you don't trust anyone else.
But there was nothing.
And in pursuit of that, yeah, but when you go to, even when you want to meet your parent, like you're here, I'm here, there should be a schedule. I don't think you're expected to meet Afande Nakalema today and then maybe tomorrow or that very day you meet the president. The question we should ask you...
It's because of what she has portrayed, because she has been fighting corruption. That's why we went to her.
The intent, the mens rea that formed this action to go to her is very positive. I agree entirely. There's need for dialogue. There's need for space. But there's also need for patience. You went to her. I don't know what you agreed. Did she then say the president is not going to meet you?
She didn't do anything.
But then
you engaged down on X space, and she didn't act. So
the majority of our youth are actually not on X space. So a conversation of X space for me does not suffice so much. The real segment of our population, the Gen Z, cannot afford even this expensive data. Later on the phone. Now you cannot.
What are you doing on TV?
No, let's,
because you're talking to Ugandans apparently, and you're saying the majority cannot do what? If they cannot, if they cannot afford the phone,
country
can they afford the TV?
By far wider than Twitter space.
Sure.
By far. Let's agree to that. Now you cannot pretend. We cannot pretend that we address the issue of youth on Twitter. I am also a proponent of the same, that we need space for the young people to air out their cause. But Twitter cannot be the medium of this.
You are supposed to be their voice.
That was the last option.
Have brought this, and that's an expression
we have brought this conversation
of doubt in your capabilities.
No. Let me bring you up to speed. We've brought a proposal in Parliament for amendment of PPD Act. Because most of our young people are engaged in business. They don't want to bid, especially government contracts. Government is the biggest employer in terms of contracts. Now, young people who would ordinarily get these small contracts, and we are saying contracts below 20 million, can we segment this for the youth? But the issue of bid security and other things should be waived off. The other thing we are bringing out is, can we have like a youth bank where young people can walk in without the need for security, land title, which they don't have, to access money. These are the conversations. Apprenticeship training. We are saying we have all these thousands, hundreds of factories in this country. Can we have a piece of legislation so that our skilled young people are actually placed in these places?
Bernard, Elizabeth, and Ezra, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, I'll open the line so that you two at home, wherever you are, you can also have your say. We'll be right back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guests this evening are Ezra Ambasize, Honorable Bernard Odoi, and Elizabeth Kemejisha. This is the moment when you can also have your say. You're going to see the numbers on the screen. You can pick your phone and call us and tell us what you think, what has been your experience, and probably your anger against corruption. What would you propose, or what have you been able to witness or to hear wherever you are? This is your moment to say what is on your heart. But remember to tell us your name and where you're from. And in case you're angry, we can understand. But please let us debate with civility. So now, Elizabeth, I can imagine you two, more or less, you're also a human rights defender in some way, right?
Yes, please.
How do we get over this? Because in Kenya, I suppose the Ugandan youth were also picking a leaf from Kenya.
Yeah.
It looks like something is snowballing out of order, because the president there has given a lot of compromises, but the young people are not relenting. Do you really think it's a wise thing to go the Kenya way?
I think the wise thing to do is continue demanding, using the tools that have been presented by the Constitution, which is our right to assembly, our right to association. And rightfully so, Patrick, there's a wave in Africa, right now in many African states where we see youth showing discontentment with how governments are handling their issues. If you talk about NSAS in Nigeria, if you talk about fees must fall in South Africa, if you see what happened in Zimbabwe, in Burkina Faso, in Kenya here, our neighbors, and how the Gen Zs have been able to put the head of state on the line to make some compromises, like you say. So while I know that in Uganda here, when someone talks about demonstrations, you're looked at as one that is inciting violence. It's not that. And the police and the government needs to stop looking at it as such, right? On the other hand, I really think that the youth should use all tools available right now to be able to hold government accountable.
We have some youth who have been online already.
Yeah.
My producer is telling me we have some people online. I'm going to open the line so that you too can have your say. I have a caller online. Hello. Okay, as we try to channel them here, let me go to you, Bernard, because for you have a very serious responsibility to engage the young people, to make sure they also express their constitutional right to assemble, to protest. You know, how do you balance this two? That the freedom to express themselves is granted, that the enforcement does not get into their way to stop them like they have done?
The approach for me is still, we can still have these spaces. Like now, we've been on recess, but now we are back. It is very possible for me to actually identify a reasonable number of these youth and meet them in my office in Parliament. But also, even before I do that, I want to create time tomorrow and go to police and go to Luzira. Wherever these young people are, they are the core of our country. They are the core of our generation. Any decision we make to the extent of 70% affects the youth. So for me, my approach is to still create space, have an engagement, and then take part of their grievances on the floor of Parliament and present it. The test will be after our conversation with them as their representative. Are we able to have that space on the floor and present their issues? Can we demand for space to discuss their issues and get answers? That should be the approach.
Ezra, do we know actually the number of people who are now in prison? And do we know some that have already regained their freedom?
We have apparently today, the number reached 94, but other members are still missing. We are still trying to trace them.
There are some people who have been arrested and you do not know. They are not in gazetted places.
They are not. We have tried everywhere, and they are still missing.
But then the law also provides for habeas corpus. It's a matter that, as a youth representative, I want to pledge this. Tomorrow we could meet and write and demand that police should actually show us where they are.
But as long as they can, we have done that. We have already done it, even.
Yeah, then we can still follow up.
Have you heard of a story of another young Ugandan called John Bosco Kivalama?
Yes.
He disappeared without a trace, in the hands of security institutions up to now. His family has never gotten that person. So this is very scary because there is a precedent that some people have totally disappeared. The case of John Bosco Kivalama.
I don't think outrightly every precedent manifests 100%. I would want us to treat this case for the youth at that level. Let's try the available options. As youth representatives, we want to come on board and demand, because these are our people and they had issues that they were bringing out. So for us, we want to join. I want to pledge and join and demand from the IGP. For as long as we get the details of those he knows were apprehended, but they are not seen, we will demand for that.
You see,
we should be accountable as leaders.
You see, Patrick, Honorable MP is a lawmaker, and I'm sure he understands the law, and mostly the Bill of Rights, that is Chapter 4
yes.
of the Constitution. I don't know why, I don't know whether you're politicking or what you're saying it exactly out of conviction. But if it was out of conviction, I think you would have done that earlier when the youth declared that they are going to do what? I just want you to tell me, do you know any, you're from, you are a member of Parliament, Eastern
yes.
region. Do you know any member who has disappeared from East? You don't know?
No,
you don't know any name?
No, it's not about names.
Which means you're doing it just because Ugandans are watching.
I'll give you messages here and you read. On that very day, Tuesday, I was engaging some of these young people. They were calling me, where are you? Can you join us? We were discussing.
You see, they are calling you. You're not calling them to join them.
No, let's be a bit.
You should be leading them.
Communication is because two sides.
This is a right.
I can call you. You can call me.
It is their right.
I'm saying
it is their right.
We were engaging.
It is their right.
Days before Tuesday, and even on that very Tuesday, we were engaging. Today, when I appeared here, several of them sent me messages saying, "At least we are happy. At least we are happy." So for me, it's not about a win-win. This issue affects all of us, and we must be accountable. We have the mandate of the youth to represent them. The issues they have are genuine. I have summarized a few spheres where accountability committees of Parliament have made recommendations on which all these arrests have been made. And I'm saying we must do more to ensure that we address the issue of the youth. We can't run away from it. Youth are there, energetic, they are ready to do anything. So how do we manage? How do we harness this critical mass? They are educated, they are skilled, they are ready to work. How do we utilize that? This huge population, they can be a huge human resource base. Some other countries are actually crying of human resource.
I don't think you know. I don't think you know how, or what to do with them, or how to engage them. I don't think you know, because that bus has already left you. Because for more than 30 years or 40 years, unemployment is only growing, and corruption is only increasing, and service delivery is going down. Yeah. And you know, when you look at the city where we are, it is pathetic. This is not a city. A capital city of a nation. No. It's poor, it's bad.
I want to implore you to read a book called Townsmen in the Making. Townsmen in the Making, written in 1964. It talks about the whole planning of the city's urban centers. And I agree with you. The issue of transportation, the issue of roads, the issue of accommodation, the issue of welfare, everything is in that book. So I believe it is still possible. Because we can't run away from it anyway.
Yeah, but for this government or a parliament to address that, I'm convinced that train has left you already. I don't think.
Yet all those who have been arrested and charged for corruption and abuse of office was as a result of the recommendation of Parliament. I don't think I agree.
Elizabeth, you talked about the wave in Africa, and you've given examples. Are we now seeing a new generation of young people that are going to be relentless, are going to be demanding for their rights as they understand their responsibilities? Should this make the leaders who have been around, you know, get really scared? Because it looks like we have entered a new phase, haven't we?
I really think yes, Patrick. And our leaders need not to be scared, but they need to pay more attention. More and more young people are involved in politics, elective politics. More and more people are involved in understanding where our taxes are going. Many and more people are concerned by the state of our public transport. Many young people are concerned with what's happening in hospitals, which wasn't the case so many years ago. So many young people's eyes are open and we are asking, where is accountability for our money? Where is accountability for our taxes? So it's important for government also to step up, because young people are not relenting, right? The young people in Kenya, it's been going on how long now? A week or so? And they are not stepping down. They're saying, let it make sense. The increased inequality between young people in rural and urban centers is despicable in this country, right? I usually like to talk about health because I think many of us Ugandans in this pseudo middle class where we claim to be are only one medical bill away from abject poverty, right? So many people cannot afford a meal a day. I do not know how many people are seated and sleeping on the streets in this country because they cannot afford housing. I do not know how many people right now, women especially, are in the informal sector, and we know that that sector is not protected at all. So social protection is also a concern for many of them. And many of these are young women, young men. So I do not think that the government should relax, because young people are not relaxing. Young people are using all modes of communication available. And I'd like to disagree that social media right now does not play such a critical role, because a lot of organizing for this peaceful demonstration happened on Twitter. These are young people. They are not, you know, they are not trained to be human rights defenders. They did not go to law school like myself or Ezra or Hon. They've not been trained in anything, but these are young people whose eyes are open, that each time I go to buy 100,000 would afford to take me a week. And right now it cannot. That I cannot afford to take my child to have quality education right now. That many of us, many young people are delaying to have children because you cannot afford to feed yourself, right? So we are in that state of waithood where there is delayed, you know, passage or growth to adulthood, to enjoy the responsibilities, to enjoy the rights that, you know, accrue to adults. So I think that the government needs to step up their accountability mechanisms, and it's important for them not to say that they are acting. They need to act. We need to bring people to book. Parliament cannot continue to look like a you know, a lot needs to be done to
Looks
change.
like I'm having technical hitches with our phones. So for that matter, I'm going to give you Ezra. Okay, my transmission director is telling me something I can't say, but the phones are not going through. Ezra, what's going to be your concluding remark?
It is going to be clear. I have had the privilege of being in the youth leadership. At the same time, I'm now on the other side.
You're defending their rights.
Defending them. So I have a connection with them in all sides. It is why, at this time, I thank you, you're putting on black. You see, today we decided to put on black. I don't know whether you're aware, Honorable. So, on Tuesday, youth protested. Yesterday, youth protested. Today, others were arrested. Even in Ntungam, there was a protest today.
It's part of Uganda.
Yes, I'm saying, I'm trying to show you that this is not going to stop. It is something that is going to escalate until young people are being given an ear to know what exactly they are doing. These are people who are educated. I want to first a bit divert that issues of Uganda are not the same as issues of Kenya. True. Young people of Uganda are not picking a leaf from any country, but they are looking at their country. These are long-sighted youth that we have now who have said that the people who are in power, they are above 60 years. In 20 years to come, no one will be accountable of this problem that is coming up. Let's attack it right now.
They have a bigger stake in Uganda.
Exactly.
They have more them in Uganda.
And that is the youth that we have who are very patriotic to their country. And even a youth knowing who has not gone to law school, just he's a medical doctor. I know very many youth there. In fact, these young people, their protest, it was tribalist, it was leaderless, it was partyless. Those were the principles.
So which ones went to meet Afandana Kalema?
The ones that to meet Afandana Kalema, that is before. But the principle before, and it was fearless. You hear that, fearless. So if you think you can threaten these young people with all sorts of tanks and what, that is not a solution.
Okay.
A solution is in fact, may I know, and we believe, that's why we are saying the president has to listen to us, because I think he has not been informed by me. The problem is the people who implement, and that's why we are running. We would be running to State House like you have seen other youth running to State House, but we know where the problem is, where we should tackle it from. The moment you tackle that institution, you will tackle everything.
Honorable Bernard, what's going to be your parting shot?
I want to call upon my generation to stand firm. Let's have this conversation and spell out our issues. Recently, I was having a conversation with a group of young people whose parents actually retired from civil service. Your father has retired, you are like 7 children, 5 at the university, but even getting their pension becomes a big deal, becomes a big issue. Such are the grievances that government must address. The issue of inclusivity and space. In 2020, during the campaign, I presented a memorandum to the president, and I want to remind that he had pledged to actually have sub-regional meetings with especially the youth to address their different issues. Because the issue facing the young people of Karamoja is different from what is facing the young people of Chigezi. So even these issues must be segmented and solution must be put forward.
Thank you. Elizabeth, your parting shot.
I think my parting shot, one is a reflection that I'd like to leave with our viewers today, and maybe to our leaders. I hope this message gets to you to reflect on. What is the legitimacy of a government that cannot provide critical social services to its people? That's one. I think it's important for us to reflect on that. And then 2, it's also important for us, Patrick, to reflect on why we are here. Talking about corruption, why young people are hitting the streets to protest. I think there's a number of things that have happened before, right, that have made it necessary for youth to use these kind of initiatives to try to push the government, to try to push state machinery, to address the issue of corruption. That's 2. 3, I think it's important that we take away the conversation, and this we said before, from meeting the president to, having a conversation with him. These things have happened before, right, where people have sat down, met the president. The president is not the law. We do have processes, we do have structures where people are paid to do this work. Let the structures work. The IGG usually has reports on the cost of corruption in this country. There are several recommendations. Why aren't we implementing those recommendations? Why are we seeking to see the head of state to address these matters? That's the 3rd one. And then lastly, I think is a call to the young people out there to say that let's stand strong. What we are doing is not wrong. We are paying for these things later. God forbid, many of the people right now, like Ezra said, will not be present in 20 years. So do not relent, do continue to demand through using the different constitutional rights that the Constitution has presented to you to be able to hold government accountable for corruption.
Elizabeth, Bernard, and Ezra, gentlemen and lady, I want to thank you so much for the time you have given us, for having honored our invitation to be here on the spot, and for having added value on this platform. I believe we have a beautiful country, we are good people, we are a good country, and Uganda, we're like just one family. Sometimes we rival like siblings, but I think this is beyond rivaling. There's a real problem we have to look at. A young lady somewhere in Impigia just sent me a message. For her, she says, Uganda is like a patient who's having multiple organ failure. Yeah. She thinks that if this was cancer, she says, this could be cancer on stage 4. Are we going down, Uganda? I think we always pull through. We have always done. We can do this, Uganda. Good night and God bless Uganda.